Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I am the host today, Kirsten Howe. Um, I'm hoping that y'all had a very nice and semi-normal Thanksgiving. We're recording this just after Thanksgiving, rounding the curve into the home stretch toward Christmas now. And I hope this lovely season will be enjoyable and not too stressful for all of you. As I think I may have mentioned before here, I adopted three kittens over the summer, and I'm just really not sure how wise it will be to put up a Christmas tree. Although in my hair salon, they had a Christmas tree hanging upside down from the ceiling, which I thought that might work for me. We'll see. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get on to the show. So today we're going to be talking about women and retirement, and thanks to the women's liberation movement of the 60s and 70s, wow, a long time ago, for the first time really in our history, a very large number of career women are retired or soon to retire after long careers doing meaningful work. And for many of the new or impending loss of structure, of purpose, and even identity that results from retirement is challenging. The generations before faced their own challenge, but not this particular one. And really, there's no role model or template for career women who are retiring. Enter my guest, Helen Dennis, who has been focused for years on creating support systems for women who are contemplating transitioning into and living in retirement. I'm going to bring Helen on in just a second, but I want to give you her official introduction. She is a nationally recognized leader on issues of aging and retirement. She has academic, corporate, and nonprofit experience. She's received numerous awards for her teaching at USC's Davis School of Gerontology and for her various contributions to the field of aging, to the community, and the literary arts. She is the editor of 2 books, the author of over 100 articles. She's a frequent speaker, and she has a weekly syndicated column on successful aging for the Southern California News Group, which reaches 1.6 million readers. Wow, that's very impressive. And she's published almost 1,000 columns doing that. She has assisted over 25,000 employees to prepare for what we would call the non-economic aspects of retirement. She is co-author of the Los Angeles Times best-selling book, Project Renewment, the first retirement model for career women, and we're going to talk about the book a little bit. And she's been recognized by PBS Next Avenue as one of the 50 influencers in aging. She's really got a very impressive background. Helen, welcome so much. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Kirsten. And I think you really captured the impetus of this whole renewment, retirement, renewal aspect, in that there hasn't been role models for career women, how to create that next 20 to 30 years. So
yeah,
you captured the emphasis perfectly.
Well, thank you. Okay, so historically, our traditional gender roles within families, at least in the age when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, husband goes off to work, wife stays home to raise children. That led men and women to being very different in how they identify themselves. And so, as a very gross generalization, of course, a man would identify as his career, whatever he did for a living, whether doctor, teacher, auto worker, whereas a woman her identity was more wrapped up in being a wife and a mother and a homemaker. And one of the obvious differences there is that at some point, most people retire from a career, whereas the wife, mother, homemaker, that really never goes away. You never get to retire from that. And so the end of that thing that is our identity can be difficult for people to navigate. And now women, I think, really for the first time are experiencing that. They're retiring from careers and experiencing that loss of structure and maybe purpose and identity. So one of the things that you have done is, as a result of your exposure and your interest in that phenomenon of career women who are retiring, is you developed the concept of a retirement, renewment group. So tell us a little bit about that, how you got it started, and what that word renewment means.
So that word is something we made up. It's a cross between retirement and renewal. So let me tell you, and this is a story.
Great.
And this is a story that started in 1999 when my colleague and co-author, Bernice Bratter, who was retiring from her second executive director position, called me and said, is there anything for career women who really have felt passionate about their work, identify with their work, and how they move on to this next chapter? Because she says, I got to tell you, I'm having a problem. And this is a very well put together woman. I said, Bernice, let's have lunch. Maybe there's something to talk about. We had a 4-hour lunch. So then
a little bit to talk about. Yeah.
We had 2 things to talk about. And she said, well, why don't you invite some like-minded women at a similar life stage and career, and I'll do the same. We'll meet at our house. We'll have dinner. We had a 4-hour dinner. There was a lot to talk about. And we decided, well, let's meet every month. And there were a couple of things we decided. Let's meet every month. We're going to have a topic and we'll discuss the topic. What evolved was what we did not want to do. We did not want to form a business. We did not want to form a 501c3. We did not want to form a traditional membership organization. Been there, done that. Didn't want to fundraise, didn't want a board of directors. So we said, okay, let's just do it, see what happens. So we continued to meet. And for the first 5 years, we took notes because we said we're onto something, because no one is talking. This is 1999. No one is talking about this. Well, we proceeded to have these discussions, and other women, which happened to be on the west side of Los Angeles, said, I hear about you've got this really interesting group of women. Can we join you? It's hard to join. And I said, we'll help you start a group. That was group 2. And then there was group 3. And then there was group 4. So there are about 35 to 40 renewment groups across the country that have met anywhere from 2, and our group, 22 years later, is still meeting.
Oh my goodness, 22 years.
Some of them adopted their own names, like the living room group, because they meet in the living room. There is the Labor Day group, because they started their renewment group a day after Labor Day. And then there is the Women of Wisdom. So we said, we don't really care what you call it, but talk to each other and help create this future you want. So that is how Renewment got launched. We got some press from the LA Times and also from Time Magazine online. And I have to add, we always knew there was maybe a book in here, but weren't sure. So the CEO of Scribner, which was part of Simon & Schuster, read the information, found the journalist, called us and said, we want you to write a book. We said, we can do that. So 18 months later, we submitted a manuscript, and the notes that we took for those first 5 years was part of the book. In other words, these were the conversations we've had. So that morphed into the book of 38 essays. And at the end of the book, there's a guide, because Bernice and I said, we do not want to run around the country seeding renewment groups. So let's give them the tools. If you want to do it, here's a guide, turnkey. Here are the questions. Here's how to form a group. And that last part is a guide. And then, to our shock and amazement, we made the LA Times bestseller list. So
tell us the title of the book.
The title of the book is Project Renewment, the first retirement model for career women.
And you've got a copy there, I assume.
Oh, copy. Here we go.
We can see that there. Okay.
Here we go. This is the book. I want to tell you an interesting little sidebar. So you notice the color. It's turquoise.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I think that's not by accident because Tiffany, it's like a Tiffany blue.
Oh, Tiffany box. Yeah.
So what would appeal to a woman more than a Tiffany box? I don't
Okay.
think that's by accident, quite honestly. Uh,
Okay. That's just how it came
Also,
out. But
whoever did the graphics read the book, and that was rather reassuring. Um, so that's how the how renewment really evolved. So there are women from across the country. We have them in Florida, in Virginia, in Massachusetts, in Northern California. And the reality is, we really don't know how many groups there are because
sure. Yeah.
we're not in control.
Right. People could read your book and
We,
start their own group, and you would never know about it.
I mean,
Yeah.
the group popped up, I think, in Cincinnati. She said, "Oh, we're part of our church group. We've been meeting for 3 years." I said, "That's wonderful."
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, so Helen, tell me what are some well, let's start with is there like a most common topic or a we've got to get this topic covered before we move on to other things for the groups that you've seen?
So I think if women are thinking about retirement, the kind of on the edge, I think the first thing is the retirement decision. What are the clues that say it's time? And what are the clues that say it is not time? So
Okay. And we're talking just again, not about the finances, not about the economics.
this is
We're
not
talking
about
about
the finances. This is not about the finances. I mean, is
right,
there are there some clues such as I really don't like coming to work anymore,
right. Yeah.
or um, I find that my office is now next to the restroom, or I'm not being invited to the retreats. But on the other hand, they say I love my work.
Right.
I
Right.
This is a part of what I do. There's no reason. So what are the clues that you can pick up that say it's time or not time?
That will point you either way. Yeah. Or it could be, oh, we just started this whole new uh, division in my company and I'm really excited about it. Well, then it's not time. It's time
Exactly.
to, keep going if you're excited and happy. Yeah. Okay. So
So
that's
I
that's
think
kind of a initial conversation in the
exactly.
group.
I think the second is we called it "Who am I without my business card?" And that's a question of identity.
Yeah.
Um, it's really the first time women are being recognized for that identity and they are projecting that identity. So, who am I without my business card? And I think the third that has come up is productivity. I mean, we are a very work centered, outcome, achievement oriented society.
Yes.
So, what
I
happens if no one is setting the goals and no one is recognizing you for the rewards? What does productivity mean? And it's interesting. What evolved is women redefined productivity, and
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What does that look like? That
it
redefinition?
was more internalized. In other words, am I taking care of myself?
Oh,
Am I going to the gym?
those are
Uh,
very good goals.
so they're more internal goals,
Right,
but
right.
Kirsten, that's not an easy leap because we're used to being reinforced and recognized on what we do
Yeah,
that's outside of ourselves.
yeah. But I guess maybe some women aren't so used to that. Like, if you're the business owner, nobody's going around saying, "Hey, you did a great job. Let's give you a raise." But I understand that. I get that. Yeah, we you have other things that give you juice in that situation. Um, so so productivity. I guess that's gonna be a different thing for every retired woman. How you've got to feel productive is the point.
You have to feel productive. Within that is having a sense of purpose
Hmm. Right.
and, what does that even mean in this life stage? And there are many other topics. Passion, who thought about passion? Now people tell me I have to find my passion. Where do I go with this?
Yeah, that's kind of a more modern thing. I don't know. When we were going to college and launching careers, you got to get a job.
Yeah. No one asks you to fill your heart space.
Right. But there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe we missed out on something, but by not focusing on that.
And comments for particular in heterosexual couples. What if he retires first? Oh my God. I come home and the laundry's not done. The dishes are in the sink. The grocery, what have you done all day?
Yeah, I would imagine the retirement of a career woman would have some impact, positive or negative or both, on that domestic relationship. In most cases, yeah. Things have to shift a little, I would guess.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Okay, so in a typical renewment group meeting, the groups, they set their own everything. I'm guessing they decide how often they're going to meet, but what happens typically in a meeting?
So pre-pandemic, usually
that's our new thing, right?
Usually there's a meal and it's in someone's home, so
Okay.
you do break bread.
Nice.
There's usually the first section, we call it a check-in, like let's catch up with each other briefly. What's happened and usually it's monthly.
Okay.
And usually it would be 2 to 3 hours, so you would spend really some good time together. You'd have dinner or you'd have lunch, maybe 2 hours. I mean, if you're in Los Angeles, you have to tack on your commute time.
Traffic, yeah.
And so that typically, there would be a topic that would be announced.
Okay.
But Kirsten, there would be flexibility. In other words, if we decided on a topic and then said, we really aren't interested, let's talk about X instead.
Right.
We said, that's fine. So there's a lot of flexibility.
Right. The group will tend to be what the group wants and needs at any given moment, I imagine. Okay, so, and some of the time they're taking topics from your book, I think. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And give us some other examples of topics that come up in the meetings, because this, I think you can tell this is something that's very interesting to me, very relevant to me, as someone who hopes someday to retire.
So if you are the topic, who will be there for me? Sometimes it is children, or maybe not, or a partner, or maybe not.
Yeah, you're walking away from coworkers and that whole support structure. Yeah.
Another is authenticity. What is now my new authentic self, and what does that mean? Talk a little bit about wisdom. We talk about wisdom and aging. Well, what does that have to do with me? Am I there yet? How do I know? So these are some of the topics. I only use glasses to see, Kirsten. Here's one. Am I addicted to power?
Oh, that's interesting.
Having less steam in my engine.
Oh, yeah. That's something that we all kind of face, or one way or another. Yeah.
And the whole notion of spirituality, connecting to my soul. So these are some topics that have come up in our traditional pre-pandemic conversations.
Has the pandemic changed how things happen, or changed the conversations that you've been having? Does your group, your personal group, still meet in person?
We have just resumed meeting in person.
Okay. Did you continue meeting by Zoom for the last couple of years? Yeah. Okay.
So
you wouldn't give that up. Yeah.
Very good. Here's part two of the story.
Okay.
Part two. So the pandemic hits and people aren't meeting. So my colleague Bernice Bratter and I chatted, and I said, we have a database. It's pretty loose, but we have a database. Let's make up something else. Let's launch the virtual Renewment Roundtable. And we'll put out an invitation and say, this is a roundtable. We have 15 seats. First come, first serve. And we're going to talk about transition, change, pandemic. Well, the group filled up. And then we had a waiting list. So then we started group 2. And then we had a waiting list. So we just are launching group 11.
Oh my gosh. And Helen, you facilitate all of those virtual groups?
Yeah, Bernice and I facilitate all
Between the two of you, yeah. That takes a lot of time. 11 groups every month?
Yes. And all of this, both pre and during pandemic, everything has grown virally. We do not have a marketing plan.
Yeah.
This is just word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yeah.
And that's what's happening now with our roundtables. So I have to say, be careful what you ask for because it might happen. I want to add another piece because
Sure.
there's another either responsibility or another role here is because I think we did it with our in-person renewment groups. But now, even with our virtual groups, I think we have a contribution to make. We take notes during our virtual groups. We have engaged graduate students, which has been wonderful, to take notes and also to participate. We get a little bit of an intergenerational perspective on our topics. We don't know what form or shape, but we have lots of notes on lots of topics.
So you're getting ready to write another book, maybe?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what shape or form, but
if you feel like it's something that needs to be disseminated, it needs to be shared.
I think it needs to be shared because we don't know because many of the women, I would say most of the women in our virtual groups are newly retired or are retired, or several of them are working part-time. But now we have this new space. What do we know about women, career women, newly retired? What is their perspective on life? What are they doing? How are they managing? What have they learned? And I don't think there's a lot written about that segment of career women.
Yeah, and couldn't that really be helpful to younger women to just kind of have that as something to think about as they're going along? These are the things that women who retire are dealing with, and yeah, you might be only 50 years old, but start thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly, because what have we learned? So this is for our benefit. But I say, what have we learned that we can share and contribute to a body of knowledge? Yeah. So as a participant, you have two roles. You're participating, but you're also for your own good and those of your peers, but you're also contributing to a body of knowledge. So that's kind of the two pieces of that.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to now interrupt this part of the podcast episode to deal with a special segment that we try to have every episode called Ask Kirsten. And the Ask Kirsten episode is I will read a question that we've gotten from a listener or a client of mine or just someone who has a question. It's not related to this topic. It's related to what I do. But we get questions, and if you have an Ask Kirsten question that you'd like answered on the podcast, go ahead and email that to us. The address is info@Absolute Trust Council. Okay, so I'm just going to take a minute to answer this question. This is from Janice in Clayton, and Janice says, my children are technically adults, meaning over the age of 18, but I worry that if something happened to me, they would not be able to handle a large inheritance. what should I do? That's a really great question. Yes, 18-year-olds are old enough to be considered adults, but not really fully developed. So most parents don't think 18 years old is old enough to receive a large inheritance. And that's the beauty of doing planning, is that you can change that. Yes, 18 years old is legally an adult, but if it's your money and you planned it out, you can control it. You can decide when they're going to get their inheritance. So you could write an estate plan that says they don't get their inheritance until they're 25, or until they graduate from college, or they get some of it when they're 25, the rest of it when they're 30. There's lots of different ways. It can be anything that you can think of. I always tell people, as long as it's legal, you can do it. So it's a great question. The parents out there who have 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and know that that's not really fully mature, you just need to do some planning, and you'll be fine. Okay, so again, that's the Ask Kirsten question. If you have an Ask Kirsten question, info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Okay, so Helen, back to our conversation. You have been doing these groups both in person. For many years you did a in-person group of your own, and now you are doing groups online. I'm going to say on Zoom. I don't know if that's the platform you use, but what have you seen a difference in the way that works between those two formats?
I do. It seems that the video conferencing, the conversations get to the point very quickly. And it could be that we have 1 hour, not 3 hours. And there is a level of honesty. And this may sound strange, but a level of intimacy and trust. Now, a sidebar, this is not a traditional support group. We do not fix people.
Right.
But the honesty with which issues and opportunities are discussed is so fast. They get to there's no nonsense. It gets to the point. And it could be, we don't live with each other. We see each other once a month. It could be that little bit of anonymity and safety. It could be this segmented period of time. And also the relationships, which I never would have anticipated. People form relationships. Let me give a quick example. We have a woman in Palos Verdes, recent widow, wanted to sell her house. We have a real estate agent in Palm Springs who is a PhD psychologist and a real estate agent. So she gets the right house for the right person. Okay. The two of them connected. In 2 weeks, the real estate person found a house. The person in Palos Verdes bought it, moved, and the two of them are friends.
They're pals, yeah.
We had a recently retired attorney and a woman who was heading up Grandparents for Democracy.
Okay.
The attorney was looking for a cause. They connected, and they had a great volunteer support activity. So two people who worked for hospice in different parts of the country connected. They said, I didn't know you worked for hospice. So people make connections, which I would not have anticipated that would happen so quickly on video conferencing.
On video, yeah. It is an interesting phenomenon. I think, I think you and I talked about this before off mic, that I pick up on that easier intimacy with my clients on video. I think that's how that's my perception, is that it is a little easier. And maybe in my case, it's because they don't have to get dressed up drive to my office. They don't have to sit in an attorney's office, which can be intimidating for people. They're more comfortable in their home, and maybe that's part of what's happening in your meetings also. I don't know.
But I'd also say there is nothing like face-to-face meetings.
Yeah.
There are different dynamics, different benefits.
Yes.
I would not like to do away with that, but it's an alternative.
Yeah, it's a fine alternative. It's not perfect, but face-to-face meetings are far from perfect right now. Also, so they have their problems. But okay, that's interesting. Now I'm going to turn to our audience questions. We do have some questions from our viewers. And for those of you who aren't watching us live, you don't get to ask questions. If you watch live on Facebook, you can type a question into the chat. So go ahead and do that if you'd like to. Here's a question. Are the members of a renewment group all about the same age or stage of retirement?
It's a good question. In our face-to-face groups, I would say they are at a similar life stage. In our virtual groups, and this was surprising, they are all over the map. And I thought that would be a distraction. It was an enrichment.
Oh, really?
So you have someone that's working part-time, someone newly retired, and someone retired for 3 years.
Years. Mm-hmm.
That was enriching as opposed to being distracting.
Yeah, you have different perspectives
Yeah.
that everybody brings to the meeting. Okay, and okay, here's another question. How many members does or should a renewment group have?
I would say for an in-person, maybe 8 to 10.
Okay.
And virtual, I would say 8 to 10. But you still can have a very rich dialogue with 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, 8 to 10.
Okay. Okay, and I've got one here. This is interesting. What kinds of issues have you seen people dealing with in their relationships with their spouses when they retire? We kind of touched on that, but maybe you can go further into that.
Probably the most important piece is having a conversation about how much private time, private space. Is the house reorganized? Are you going to share an office? Are you going to have an office? Having the conversation about what would we like to do in the next 6 months or 3 months. So the most important is having a conversation about time, your activities, and particularly what I call private time and shared time.
Yeah, I hadn't really considered that because I live alone, so that, I don't think about things like that. But yeah, if you're suddenly both at home all day, that could be a lot.
Better for worse, but not for lunch, maybe.
Yeah, I like that. Very good. Okay, let me just scan quickly through the questions and make sure I didn't miss any. Okay. Sorry. I think I got them all. Okay. So, Helen, thank you so much for being here today, for talking about this really fascinating topic, near and dear to my heart, of course. And I'm just going to remind people about your book. You want to mention that one more time?
So I'll mention it. Do we have time for two quick comments?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things we learned in retrospect is what we developed, and that was not our intention. So we developed a platform to support career women through transition and change for a lifetime. Because we have women that have stayed with this. I mean, I
Like
started
22 years. Yeah.
22 years ago. We have women in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 80s, as in there's no graduation from transition and change. I don't know if that's a threat or an opportunity, but it is. And the other is if anyone is interested in asking about our group 11, which has a few seats open,
Oh,
I can, you want to give him my email or?
yeah, well, yeah, whatever is the best way, they go to your website. We've got here,
So
helendennis.com,
yeah, I would say go to the website, renewment.org.
renewment.org. Yep, it's right there on the screen.
There is a contact.
Okay, great.
If you're interested, put your name there, your contact information, and we'll get back to you.
Okay, so you can go through Helen and join one of her virtual groups, or you can buy her book and start your own group and do it that way. Whatever is your preferred method, whatever you have a toleration for. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.